Montana Territory, 1885. Winter had settled over the valley like a prayer shawl, muffling the sounds of Timber Creek beneath layers of pristine snow. Faith Tremaine sat alone at a table in the town's only hotel, the warmth of the dining room a stark contrast to the biting December chill outside. At 22, she possessed a quiet beauty that drew glances, honey-blonde hair pinned loosely at her nape, eyes the color of summer cornflowers, and a simple blue dress that had seen better days but still managed to complement her slender frame. Her pen moved deliberately across the Christmas card, her handwriting neat and controlled despite the emotions threatening to spill onto the page. The card bore no name at the top, no specific person for whom her carefully chosen words were intended. She'd been writing these nameless Christmas cards for 3 years now, a ritual that both comforted and tormented her. Faith believed that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, not anymore. Not since the fire had claimed her family home back in Pennsylvania, along with her parents and younger brother. She'd survived only because she'd been in town that day, picking up supplies. The frontier was no place for dreamers, she'd learned. The West demanded practicality, resilience, and above all, emotional self-sufficiency. Attachment only led to devastation when it was inevitably torn away. Yet something in her still yearned to connect, to be heard, even if the words were never sent. So she wrote Christmas cards addressed to no one, pouring out her heart to a recipient who didn't exist. "Miss, would you care for more coffee?" Faith startled, quickly covering the card with her hand. She looked up to find Noah Nielsen watching her with curious eyes. The young cowhand had arrived in Timber Creek 3 months prior, taking work at the Patterson Ranch just outside town. At 25, he stood tall and broad-shouldered, his face clean-shaven with a strong jaw and kind eyes that seemed to hold more wisdom than his years suggested. His dark hair curled slightly where it peeked out beneath his hat, and despite the harsh Montana winter, his skin held the sun-kissed glow of someone who lived in the saddle. "Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, that would be lovely." She slid the card into her journal as he poured the steaming liquid, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened under his gaze. Noah nodded toward her journal. "Christmas greetings. Your family back east will be mighty pleased to hear from you." Faith tensed. "I have no family back east, not anymore." Something shifted in his expression, not pity, which she would have detested, but understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that. I lost my folks to cholera when I was 14. My uncle raised me, taught me ranching, but he passed on 2 years ago." "Is that why you came west?" she asked, grateful for the shift in conversation. Partly, he hesitated, then gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Mind if I sit a spell? My shift doesn't start for another hour." She should have declined. Maintaining distance was how she'd survived these past years. But something in his easy manner disarmed her defenses. "Please." Noah settled into the chair, removing his hat and setting it on the table. "I came west because I believe there's room to build something here. Something that's truly mine." His eyes held hers. "What about you, Miss Tremaine? What brought you to Timber Creek?" "Circumstance mostly." She sipped her coffee. "After the fire, I had a distant aunt in Helena who took me in. When she passed last year, I came here to take the teaching position. The children adore you. Mrs. Hathaway at the general store says you've brought real learning to this town." Faith felt warmth creep into her cheeks. "It's not much, but it's purposeful." Noah's gaze drifted to her journal. "So if not to family, who were you writing to, if you don't mind my asking?" The question hung between them, innocent yet penetrating. Faith's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. How could she explain that she wrote letters to ghosts? To possibilities, to the parts of herself she'd walled off. "No one," she finally answered. "I was writing to no one at all." His brow furrowed, but before he could respond, the hotel owner called him over. Noah rose reluctantly. "Perhaps you'll explain that mystery to me sometime, Miss Tremaine." He smiled, a gentle expression that lingered in her thoughts long after he'd gone. Faith hadn't intended to see Noah again outside their occasional encounters in town. But 3 days later, as she trudged through the snow from the schoolhouse toward her small rented room above the milliner's shop, a wagon pulled alongside her. "Miss Tremaine," Noah called over the creak of wheels and snort of horses. "Allow me to offer you a ride. This snow's getting worse by the minute." She hesitated, clutching her books to her chest. Dark clouds loomed overhead, promising more snow before nightfall. Practicality won out. "Thank you, Mr. Nielsen." He helped her onto the bench, his hand warm even through her gloves. As they rode, large flakes began to fall, dancing in the fading light. "I should warn you," Noah said, flicking the reins gently. "I've been tasked with delivering a Christmas tree to the schoolhouse." Mrs. Patterson thought the children might enjoy decorating it for the holiday. "Would you mind stopping there first?" Faith couldn't suppress her smile. "The children will be delighted." "It's very thoughtful. Christmas should be special even out here." He glanced at her. "Maybe especially out here." At the schoolhouse, Noah unloaded a magnificent pine, its scent filling the small building with the essence of the forest. Faith found candles and string, and together they secured the tree in a bucket of sand. "The children can make paper ornaments tomorrow," Faith said, standing back to admire it. "What about you, Miss Tremaine? Will you join in the decorating?" She turned to find him watching her, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "Of course, it's my responsibility." "That's not what I asked." His voice was gentle. "Do you enjoy Christmas, the celebrations, the traditions?" Faith looked away. "I used to." Before the fire, his directness startled her, but there was nothing intrusive in his manner, only genuine interest. "Yes," she busied herself arranging the candles. "Christmas was magical in our home. My father would read us stories by the fire, and my mother made gingerbread houses that were too beautiful to eat, though we always did. My brother Timothy and I would hang our stockings and stay awake as long as we could, trying to catch a glimpse of Santa Claus. The memories flowed unbidden, bringing with them a familiar ache. That sounds wonderful, Noah said softly. It was. But that life is gone now. The life is gone, he agreed, but the memories remain, and new memories can be made. Faith shook her head. I've learned it's safer not to hope for too much, Mr. Nielsen. The frontier takes as much as it gives. Perhaps, he moved closer, his voice dropping, but what's the point of surviving if we're not really living? His words struck her with unexpected force. Before she could reply, the wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. Noah peered out into the worsening storm. We should get you home before this becomes a full blizzard. The ride to town was silent, each lost in thought. When they reached her lodgings, Noah insisted on escorting her to the door. Standing on the narrow staircase leading to her room, Faith turned to thank him. Mr. Nielsen, Noah, he interrupted with a smile. Out here, formality seems an unnecessary burden between friends. Friends, the word both warmed and frightened her. Noah, then. Thank you for the ride and for the tree. He tipped his hat. My pleasure, Faith, he hesitated, then added, about those cards you write, I hope someday you'll find someone worthy of receiving them. As he disappeared into the swirling snow, Faith stood frozen, his words echoing in her mind. How had he seen through her so easily, and why did the thought of him understanding her private ritual feel more comforting than intrusive? The Christmas social at the town hall was Timber Creek's biggest event of the year. Faith had planned to make a brief appearance for her students' sake, but as the evening of December 20th arrived, she found herself taking unusual care with her appearance. She wore her best dress, forest green with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, and arranged her hair in a style more elaborate than her usual practical bun. The hall glowed with lantern light, pine boughs and red ribbons adorning every surface. A fiddle played cheerful tunes as couples whirled across the floor. Faith moved along the edges, greeting parents and townspeople, her eyes inevitably searching for a familiar figure. Miss Tremaine, Noah appeared beside her, handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his usual work clothes exchanged for more formal attire. You look beautiful tonight. Thank you, she smoothed her skirt nervously. You look quite distinguished yourself. Distinguished, he laughed. I was hoping for dashing or heroic, but I'll accept distinguished. His easy humor made her smile despite herself. Would you prefer I lie to spare your feelings, Mr. Nielsen? There's the sharp-witted schoolteacher I've come to admire. He offered his arm. Would you honor me with a dance? Faith hesitated. Dancing meant proximity, conversation, connection, all the things she'd carefully avoided. But tonight, in the warmth and light of the hall, her reservations seemed distant. I would like that, she said, placing her hand on his arm. He led her onto the floor just as the music slowed. His hand at her waist was respectful but firm, his movements confident as he guided her through the steps. They danced in silence for a moment, adjusting to each other's rhythm. I saw your students' decorations on the Christmas tree, Noah said. They did a fine job, especially little Emma's paper angels. Faith smiled. She spent extra time on those. Said her mama told her angels watch over good children. A comforting thought, his eyes held hers. What do you believe, Faith? About angels. About faith, hope, comfort. The things that sustain us through difficult times. She missed a step and his hand tightened slightly to steady her. I believe in practicality, in making your own way. The frontier doesn't reward dreamers. Doesn't it? Noah glanced around the hall. Look at this town. Every building, every ranch, every business started as someone's dream. The frontier rewards those brave enough to hope, to build, to connect. Before Faith could respond, the music ended. Noah reluctantly released her but remained close. Would you walk with me for a moment? It's rather warm in here. Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the vast Montana sky. They walked along the boardwalk, their breath creating clouds in the frigid air. I've been meaning to ask you something, Noah said as they paused at the end of the street. The Christmas cards you write with no recipient. Why do you write them if you never send them? Faith stiffened. You're very direct, Mr. Nielsen. Only about things that matter. His gaze was gentle but unwavering. And I think this matters to you. She could have deflected, changed the subject, or simply walked away. Instead, something compelled her to answer honestly. They're a connection to who I used to be. To the faith I once had, not just my name, but belief in goodness, in possibility. I write what I wish I could still feel about Christmas, about life. She looked away. It's foolish, I know. Not foolish at all. Noah's voice was soft. It's brave to keep that part of yourself alive, even privately. Is it brave or merely pathetic? Clinging to something that's gone. Hope isn't gone until we stop looking for it, Faith. A commotion from the hall interrupted them. The social was ending, people spilling out into the street. Noah offered his arm again. May I escort you home? At her door, Faith found herself reluctant to end the evening. Would you like to come in for coffee? It's bitterly cold tonight. Surprise and pleasure crossed Noah's features. I'd like that very much. Her room was small but tidy, a single lamp casting warm light across the sparse furnishings. While she prepared coffee on the small stove, Noah examined the few personal items displayed on her shelf, a tarnished silver frame holding a family portrait, a worn Bible, and a small wooden box. Your family? He asked, gesturing to the photograph. Faith nodded, bringing 2 steaming cups to the table, taken 6 months before the fire. You have your mother's eyes. His gaze shifted to the wooden box. May I? Again she nodded, watching as he opened it to reveal a stack of Christmas cards, each carefully penned but bearing no addressee. 3 years' worth, she explained, unexpected tears pricking her eyes. 1 for each Christmas since. Noah carefully replaced the lid, treating the box with the reverence of sacred objects. Thank you for showing me. You must think me terribly sentimental. I think you're someone who's endured great loss but hasn't surrendered completely to it. He took a sip of coffee. That's rare out here. Is it? Everyone in the West has lost something, land, loved ones, innocence. We all have our ghosts. True enough, Noah set down his cup. My father was a dreamer who believed the West would make us rich. Instead, it killed him and my mother, leaving me with an uncle who saw me as free labor. His voice remained steady, but Faith saw the pain beneath his controlled expression. For years, I believed his lesson, that dreams were dangerous, that attachment was weakness, that survival meant isolation. Faith recognized her own philosophy in his words. What changed your mind? Living that way wasn't really living. His eyes met hers. One winter, a family got stranded near my uncle's ranch during a blizzard. They stayed with us for 3 weeks. They had nothing, their wagon had broken, they'd lost most of their supplies, but they had each other. The way they looked at one another, supported each other. I realized I'd been surviving, not living. Faith stared into her coffee. And now you believe connection is worth the risk. I believe isolation is its own kind of death. He reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of hers. Faith, I came to Timber Creek because I heard they needed hands at the Patterson Ranch, but I stayed because of you. Her heart stuttered, you don't know me. I know enough. I know you're kind to children who aren't yours. I know you write Christmas cards to keep hope alive. I know you've built a life from ashes." His voice deepened. "And I'd like to know more if you'll let me." Faith pulled her hand back, the familiar fear rising like floodwater. "I appreciate your candor, Noah, but—" A sharp knock at the door interrupted her. Mrs. Winters, the milliner who owned the building, stood outside, concern etched on her face. "Miss Tremaine, forgive the interruption, but there's trouble. The Mason boy is missing." Faith's stomach dropped. "Tommy, what happened?" "He and his father argued at the social. The boy ran off, and with the temperature dropping like it is." Noah was already reaching for his coat. "How long ago?" "Nearly an hour now. Sheriff's organizing a search party." "I'm coming too," Faith said firmly, grabbing her warmest cloak and gloves. The town had mobilized quickly. Lanterns bobbed in the darkness as groups of men prepared to search different areas. Sheriff Hollins was assigning territories when Noah and Faith approached. "Nielsen, good. You know the terrain. Take the creek path heading east." Noah nodded. "Faith knows Tommy best. She should come with me." The sheriff frowned. "No place for a woman in this cold." "With respect, Sheriff, I taught Tommy to read. I know his habits, his hiding places," Faith insisted. "And I'm tougher than I look." After a moment's hesitation, the sheriff nodded. "Stay close to Nielsen. Boy's only 11 in this cold." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to those caught unprepared in Montana's winter nights. Noah procured horses from the livery, helping Faith mount before swinging into his own saddle. They rode in tense silence, lanterns held high as they scanned the tree line along Timber Creek. "Tommy loves to fish here in summer," Faith said as they reached a bend in the creek. "There's a hollow tree he uses to store tackle. He might have sought shelter there." Noah guided his horse closer to hers. "You know him well." "He's bright but troubled. His mother died in childbirth and his father." She hesitated. "Mr. Mason is not an easy man, especially when he drinks." Understanding darkened Noah's expression. "Which is why the boy ran after an argument." They continued along the creek until Faith spotted something, a small footprint in a patch of snow. "Noah, look." The tracks led away from the creek toward a dense copse of pines. They dismounted, securing the horses before proceeding on foot, calling Tommy's name. The temperature was plummeting, their breath forming thick clouds in the air. "There," Noah pointed to a large hollow tree, partially concealed by undergrowth. Faith rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside the opening. Tommy Mason, are you in there?" A small, frightened voice answered, "Miss Tremaine." Relief flooded through her. "Yes, it's me, and Mr. Nielsen from the Patterson Ranch. We've come to take you home." "I ain't going back." The boy's voice was shaking, whether from cold or emotion, Faith couldn't tell. "Pa said I'm worthless, just like Ma. Said I killed her getting born." Faith's heart clenched. "That's not true, Tommy. Your mother would be so proud of you, and right now we need to get you warm. You'll catch your death out here." "Don't care," but his voice had weakened. Noah crouched beside Faith. "Tommy, I lost my ma too, and my pa said things when he was hurting that he didn't mean, but running away won't solve anything. It'll just create more pain." Silence followed, then a shuffling sound. Tommy emerged, his small frame shivering violently, lips tinged blue. Faith immediately wrapped him in her cloak, while Noah lifted the boy onto his horse, mounting behind him to share body heat. "We need to get him warm quickly," Faith said, climbing onto her own horse. "My lodgings are closest." They rode hard through the darkness, Faith leading the way. At her rooms, Noah carried the half-conscious boy inside while Faith stoked the stove to blazing and prepared hot tea sweetened with the last of her sugar. "His clothes are soaked through," Noah said, concern etching his features. Faith pulled her spare nightgown from the drawer. "It's all I have. Help him change while I make up the bed." Working together, they stripped Tommy of his wet clothing, dressed him in Faith's oversized nightgown, and bundled him in every blanket available. Noah sat beside the boy, supporting him as Faith helped him sip the hot tea. "We should notify his father and the search party," Noah said quietly. Faith nodded. "I'll go, you stay with him." "Faith, it's freezing out there." "Let me go." "You're stronger than I am. If he takes a turn, you can carry him to the doctors." Her tone brooked no argument. "Besides, I know which saloon his father frequents." Noah's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Be careful. Faith hurried through the deserted streets to Holloway Saloon, where, as expected, she found Mr. Mason drowning his worries in whiskey rather than joining the search. His belligerent reaction to the news of his son's rescue confirmed her suspicions about the home situation. Sheriff Hollins, whom she located at the search coordination point, was more receptive. "You and Nielsen did good work, Miss Tremaine. Doc Perkins will check on the boys shortly. As for Mason," his expression hardened, "I'll be having words with him about his parental obligations." When Faith returned to her room, she found Tommy sleeping fitfully while Noah sat vigilant beside him. "His fever's rising," Noah said without preamble. "I've been keeping cold compresses on his forehead." Faith touched the boy's cheek. "The doctor's coming, did his father." "Show up, no." Noah's voice was tight with anger. "What kind of man doesn't search for his own child?" "A broken one," Faith said softly, "like so many out here." Noah's expression softened as he looked at her. "Not everyone breaks, Faith. Some people bend, adapt, grow stronger." Their eyes held across the small room, something unspoken passing between them. The moment was interrupted by a knock announcing Dr. Perkins' arrival. The next morning brought both good and troubling news. Tommy's fever had broken, but his lungs sounded congested. "Pneumonia's a real risk," Dr. Perkins warned. "He needs constant care for the next week at least. Warm, dry environment, plenty of fluids." "He can stay here," Faith said immediately. "Miss Tremaine," the doctor hesitated, "while your dedication is admirable, propriety must be considered. A single woman caring for a boy." "I'll assist," Noah interjected. "Between Miss Tremaine's daytime care and my evening supervision after ranch work, we can ensure he's never alone and proprieties are maintained." The doctor seemed satisfied with this arrangement. Mr. Mason, when finally located, showed little interest in his son's welfare beyond a gruff instruction to send the bill to me when he's mended. Thus began an unexpected domestic partnership. Faith tended Tommy during the day, teaching him between doses of medicine and bowls of broth. Each evening, Noah arrived with supplies, food from the Patterson kitchen, extra blankets, books to entertain the boy, and once, mysteriously, a small pine branch with a red ribbon. "What's this for?" Faith asked, accepting the fragrant bough. Noah smiled. "Christmas is in 3 days. I thought we might bring a bit of the holiday here for Tommy's sake." "For Tommy's sake." The words echoed as Faith arranged the pine branch on her small table, adding a candle beside it. But when she caught Tommy watching with wide eyes as Noah told stories of Christmas traditions from his childhood in Minnesota, she wondered if it was truly only for the boy's benefit. On Christmas Eve, Faith returned from checking on her school to find her small room transformed. Paper chains hung from the ceiling, pinecones nestled among evergreen boughs on every surface, and candles cast a golden glow over everything. Tommy sat proudly in bed, clearly in on the surprise. "Mr. Nielsen said every Christmas needs decorations," he announced, grinning. Noah emerged from the small kitchenette area looking slightly abashed. "I hope you don't mind." "The Pattersons gave me the afternoon off, and Tommy was feeling stronger." "Mind?" Faith turned slowly, taking in the simple beauty of it all. "It's wonderful." To her embarrassment, tears sprang to her eyes. "I haven't had a proper Christmas since." Noah moved closer, his voice gentle. "I know, neither has Tommy." The boy nodded solemnly. "Pa says Christmas is for fools with money to waste. But Miss Tremaine's been reading us A Christmas Carol, and I think Scrooge was wrong before the ghosts came." Faith laughed through her tears. "Very astute, Tommy." "I brought something else," Noah said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. "For tomorrow morning. Christmas isn't Christmas without at least one present to unwrap." Tommy's eyes widened. "For me?" "For both of you," Noah corrected, placing the package on the table. "But not until morning." Later, after Tommy had fallen asleep and Noah prepared to leave, Faith walked with him to the door. "Thank you for today. It means more than I can express." "I've been thinking," Noah said, his voice low to avoid waking Tommy, "about your Christmas cards." Faith tensed slightly. "What about them?" "You write them to keep hope alive, to remember who you were before tragedy struck." His eyes held hers steadily. "But what if they could also be about who you're becoming, who you might yet be?" "I don't understand." "Faith," he took her hand, his touch sending warmth through her despite the chill of the evening. "I believe people can be reborn out here in the West, not by forgetting who they were, but by building on it, creating something new from the foundations that remain." His words resonated deep within her, touching a part of herself she'd long locked away. "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple, worth it." He released her hand reluctantly. "Think about it, please." After he left, Faith couldn't sleep. She sat at her small desk, a blank Christmas card before her, pen poised but unmoving. For 3 years she'd written to shadows, to memories, to a past that couldn't respond. But Noah's words echoed in her mind. What if they could also be about who you're becoming? With sudden clarity, she began to write. Not to ghosts this time, but to possibilities, to the future, to someone real. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Tommy woke early, his excitement contagious as Faith prepared a special breakfast of flapjacks with the last of her maple syrup. They were just finishing when a knock announced Noah's arrival, his arms laden with parcels. "Merry Christmas," he called, stamping snow from his boots. "Mrs. Patterson sent food enough for a feast, and Sheriff Hollins passed along gifts from the townspeople for our patient." Tommy's eyes grew round. "For me." "Really?" The morning passed in a blur of simple joys, unwrapping modest gifts, a carved wooden horse from Noah, mittens knitted by Mrs. Winters, books from the schoolchildren's families, singing carols and sharing stories. Faith found herself laughing more than she had in years, the wall around her heart crumbling with each moment. As dusk approached, Tommy dozed off, exhausted from the excitement. Noah helped Faith clear away the remnants of their celebration. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "The Pattersons are expecting me for evening chores." "Before you do," Faith retrieved something from her desk drawer, "I have something for you." Noah accepted the envelope, his expression questioning. "You didn't need to get me anything." "It's not exactly a gift, she took a deep breath. "It's one of my Christmas cards, but this one has a recipient." Understanding dawned in his eyes. Carefully, he opened the envelope and withdrew the card. Faith watched, heart pounding, as he read the words she'd written in the night, words of gratitude for his kindness, of appreciation for his wisdom, and finally, tentatively, of hope for what might grow between them. When he looked up, his eyes shone with emotion. "Faith." "I'm still afraid," she admitted. "The frontier takes as much as it gives, but you were right, what's the point of surviving if we're not really living?" Noah stepped closer, setting the card aside. "May I?" he asked, his intention clear in his eyes. Faith nodded, and he leaned down to press his lips gently against hers. The kiss was brief but profound, a promise of possibilities neither had dared imagine weeks before. "Merry Christmas, Faith Tremaine," he whispered as they parted. "Merry Christmas, Noah Nielsen," she replied, smiling through tears that for once were born of joy rather than sorrow. The days that followed brought both challenges and unexpected blessings. Tommy's father, sobered by a stern lecture from Sheriff Hollins and the town's united disapproval, began making halting efforts to reform his behavior. The boy remained with Faith until fully recovered, creating a makeshift family that neither she nor Noah had anticipated. January arrived with brutal cold and heavy snow, isolating Timber Creek from the outside world for weeks. Noah took a room at the hotel in town, rather than risk the treacherous daily ride to and from the Patterson ranch, allowing him to spend evenings with Faith and Tommy, their unconventional arrangement raising eyebrows, but also inspiring a protective affection from the townspeople. During those snowbound weeks, Faith found herself opening up to Noah about her past. Not just the tragedy of the fire, but the happy memories before it, the dreams she'd once nurtured, the faith she'd once held unquestioningly. In turn, he shared his own journey from bitterness to hope, from isolation to connection. "I came west believing I had to be entirely self-sufficient," he told her one evening as they sat before her small stove, Tommy asleep in the next room. "That depending on others was weakness, but that's not what the frontier teaches, not really." "What does it teach then?" Faith asked, leaning slightly against his shoulder. "That we need each other to survive. That community isn't a luxury, it's necessity. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." February brought a thaw, both in the weather and in Faith's heart. When Tommy finally returned to his father's care, with strict oversight from the sheriff and regular visits to Faith, her rooms felt emptier but her life somehow fuller. Noah continued to call on her, their courtship now open and proper, Sunday walks after church becoming a fixture of town life. It was during one such walk, as they paused by Timber Creek where the first spring flowers were pushing through melting snow, that Noah turned to her with uncharacteristic seriousness. "Faith, I've been offered the foreman position at the Patterson Ranch." "Noah, that's wonderful, you deserve it." "It means I'll be staying in Timber Creek permanently." He took her hands in his. "And it means I can finally ask you something I've been wanting to ask since Christmas." Faith's heart quickened as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "Noah, I came west believing the frontier was no place for love, that survival meant standing alone." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small pearl. "You taught me otherwise. You showed me that even here, especially here, love isn't weakness, it's strength." Dropping to one knee in the melting snow, he held the ring up to her. "Faith Tremaine, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of building a life with me here in this wild, beautiful place?" Tears blurred her vision as she nodded, words momentarily beyond her. When she could finally speak, her voice was steady with certainty. "Yes, Noah." "Yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to embrace her, Faith marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just a few months. The woman who once believed hope was a luxury she couldn't afford now found herself rich with it, wealthy beyond measure in the currency that truly mattered on the frontier: love, community, purpose, and faith. They were married in May 1886, when the wildflowers carpeted the valley and promise hung in the air like perfume. The whole town turned out for the celebration, including a beaming Tommy Mason, who proudly carried the rings. The Pattersons' wedding gift was the use of a small cabin on their property, which Noah had spent weeks preparing, determined that Faith would have a proper home. On their first Christmas as husband and wife, as they sat before their own hearth in their own home, Noah presented Faith with a small wooden box, beautifully carved with pine branches and stars. "For your Christmas cards," he explained as she traced the patterns with her fingers, "though I hope from now on they'll all have recipients." Faith smiled, leaning in to kiss him. "They will. And this year's already does." From her desk, she retrieved an envelope addressed simply, "To my husband, Noah." Inside was not only a Christmas greeting but news that would change their lives forever. By next Christmas, their family would grow by one. As snow fell softly outside their window, Faith thought of the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The frontier had indeed taken much from her: her family, her innocence, her unquestioning faith in a benevolent world. But it had given back in equal measure. A husband who understood both strength and tenderness, a community that had become family, purpose in her teaching, and now the promise of new life. The Christmas card that had once had no recipient had led her to the man who would help her rebuild not just a life, but a home, in this wild, beautiful, dangerous, generous land they now shared. And as Noah's arms encircled her, his hand resting protectively over the place where their child grew, Faith knew with certainty that the most important lesson of the frontier wasn't about survival at all. It was about living. Fully, openly, lovingly, despite the risks, because of the risks. In a land where nothing was guaranteed, love became not a luxury but the most essential provision of all.